Hello, brothers and sisters. Just giving it a few more minutes for some people to join. How's it going in the land of lockdown? We're all in quarantine. God's child from Uganda. Dale McCluskey from Florida. Charlotte from Oklahoma. Jay Reedhead. It should be live after I've streamed it. Ayla from Germany. I'm going to go over the Sea of Galilee as well. Jay Schlemmer. Thomas Root from Cooped Up Somewhere. Can't stop sleeping. Yeah, I know. You get used to waking up late these days. Shot Xavier from Minnesota. Harvard from Norway. Thomas from Cape Town, Kapstad. So I'll just give it until let's just go until 4 minutes, and then I'll start just so more people can join. TL Duncan from Ohio, how you doing? Karen from Wisconsin. Yolanda, hello. Jack Geezer from Michigan. Seth Latito from Utah. Hank from North California. Donnie from Louisiana. Thanks for joining, guys. I'm just going to give it till 4 minutes and then I will start. Got some interesting stuff. Shiloh Journey from Ottawa, Ontario. Mr. Mac from Palm Bay, Florida. Stacy Smith from Oklahoma. Val DeGal. Hello, Val. Southern California. Deborah from Massachusetts. IL, Illinois. Albuquerque. Tori Smith. Janet from Charleston. Full-time Geek from Penfield. Joy Engel from Wisconsin. Martin Ellerbrook from the Nederland. Cool. So let's do the Sea of Galilee first, because that is almost right up to the brim. 209 or minus 209. The Sea of Galilee is 1 centimeter away from breaking into the 208 range, minus 208. So that is 20 centimeters left. 20 centimeters is about that much, not very much at all. And so that's probably a couple of weeks, a little bit more than a couple of weeks until it is full. Here's the chart which I have, and as you can see, we are at 209. We've been watching it from below 210, and now it only has this tiny little bit over here to go. So 20 centimeters is time in history. So this goes back to 1966. 1966 since records began. And as you can see, it has started to get really topsy-turvy around about the Oslo Accords. And we are now coming up to the third time since 1993. So in 1992 and 93, this was around the Oslo Accords over here. And then in 2004 was the last time that it reached the upper limits. And here we can see in 2020, we've only got 20 centimeters left to go. So let me just zoom out so we can see from the whole range. You can see this is unprecedented level of rise here at an unprecedented speed. So what is it? Psalm verses, is it 49? I forget which one it is. 40, let's have a look and see. Psalm verses, I think it's 49 about the parable. Yeah, Psalm verses 49, verses 4. I will incline my ear to a parable. Let me zoom in on that. I will open up my dark saying upon the harp. And the harp is the Kinoer, which is the Sea of Galilee is called the Kinneret. So I will open up my dark saying upon the harp. The rabbis in Israel have long believed that the Messiah would come when the Sea of Galilee is full. So Sea of Galilee is right up there, guys. 20 centimeters to go. We're right at the precipice of it overflowing. And there are some videos that the Temple Institute has released. Here you can see the Sea of Galilee is bursting over the brims. So they have to open up the Daganya Dam when this happens and let the river flow down the Jordan towards the Dead Sea. But here's the Sea of Galilee absolutely almost overflowing. You can see here they're going to have to open the dam very, very soon. So these are unprecedented times as far as being on lockdown is concerned. What's happening in the world with this virus and all the quarantine measures and the crazy things that we're seeing going on. And there you go. So the Sea of Galilee is right there. Our King walked on that water, and he's coming soon. So let me close that down and let's go to fourth elections. They're talking about fourth elections. So this is what we've been expecting, and remembering that those prophecies which relate to the elections came out and were made public before the falling of the government the second time. So the Kaduri prophecies and the Shoshani prophecies were released just before the government fell the second time, which was a few months before the elections, which have just occurred now. So these prophecies are coming to pass. So we just need to understand and watch. We can only see day by day and analyze the prophecy again and look at what's happening in our world to see how this is going to come to pass. But nevertheless, there it is. There is a clear and present danger of a fourth election. Right-wing leaders revolt against President Rivlin's announcement that he will bypass Benjamin Netanyahu and give the Knesset a mandate to form the next government if blue and white is unable. So Benny Gantz, his mandate runs out tonight, midnight at Israel time, and President Rivlin has said that he will not give the mandate to Benjamin Netanyahu. And there's a huge uproar about this, but it says obviously the negotiations are hoping to wrap up before the midnight deadline. It says with half a day before blue and white leader Benny Gantz's mandate to form a government expires at midnight Monday, senior political officials spoke to Israel Hayom and warned that there was a real danger that the country would have to hold a fourth election. So we know that that's not going to happen. So there's a clear and present danger of having to hold a fourth election if there is no agreement between Gantz and Prime Minister Netanyahu in the next few hours. The process of passing laws that take aim at Netanyahu personally, so they're going to try and stop a person from forming a government who is under indictment, and they've already lodged those with the High Court. They will take aim at Netanyahu personally and will inevitably deteriorate into a fourth election. So the right needs to wake up and realize that sovereignty is in danger too, because the Trump administration will not allow it without a unity government in Israel. So we are sounding the alarm. It's not clear why right-wing leaders and senior Likud are staying quiet. So here we can see the government is about to fall. That is on Israel Hayom. We also see on the Times of Israel, frustrated president threatens new election in a bid to avoid them. Gantz mandate ends Monday with no unity deal in sight, but Rivlin believes it's Netanyahu who is holding up an agreement and is moving to force his hand. So President Rivlin is running out of patience. Blue and white leader Benny Gantz's 28-day mandate from the president to form the next government expires on Monday at midnight. So here we are in the midst of unleavened bread, and the last day of unleavened bread is coming up, which I'm going to go over in a little bit. So we are now in the midst of that feast right now, and this is about to happen. And of course, we will see tonight if they make an agreement, and if they decide that there's no more negotiations, then Rivlin will pass it over to the Knesset. But that pretty much means that Netanyahu and Gantz have not been able to form a government. So the president informed Gantz that in the present circumstances, it will not be able to extend the period for forming the government. The president made the decision after speaking to Likud Benjamin Netanyahu, who did not confirm that the two were close to signing an agreement that would lead to unity government. There's also talk that because of what has happened with Blue and White and Benny Gantz, his party and those who are allied to him have basically been broken up. So were Netanyahu to go to a fourth election, then Netanyahu would probably win it, because he has a stronger majority now that the people who were supporting Benny Gantz are now saying he's betrayed them, and he was prepared to form a government with Netanyahu. So from Netanyahu's perspective, he's probably favoring going for fourth elections, because were it to happen, he would probably win them. But we know that that's not going to happen. So this is what's happening in Israel. The mandate runs out tonight, and we shall see exactly what happens. But it doesn't look like, I don't see how they're going to be able to form this government. So that will happen tonight. Okay, is everything signal still good there? I will carry on. Cabinet weighing curfew for the last days of Passover. So they are going to implement this curfew, and this lockdown, which is coming up, is going to be on the last day of Passover, which is coming up on Wednesday, and they're saying that it's going to be for 5 days. And they're going to ban travel between cities, and the curfew is likely to be reimposed across Israel ahead of the last day of Passover, just like it was on the first day of Passover. So we see they're going to implement this curfew again, just like at the beginning of the Passover. And it says this on Arutz Sheva as well: lockdown on cities until Sunday. Government to approve new restrictions to prevent gatherings on last day of Passover. The government is expected to approve Monday severe restrictions for the coming days to prevent rallies and families gatherings on the last day of Passover. So what I want to do, it's just going to take me a couple of seconds, is just go over this again. So I hope that it will come up correctly. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay, let me know when you guys see Leviticus 23:6. I just want to confirm that you can see it correctly. I know there's a little bit of a lag. Just going to have a quick sip of water. Back. Okay, so can you guys see Leviticus 23:6 there? Yes, okay, cool. So Leviticus 23:6, this is when the institution of unleavened bread is given by God, and you'll know in the Passover story, the unleavened bread started on the same day as Passover, so it was the 14th of Nisan. But then in Leviticus, over here, God says that it's the 15th day is when unleavened bread begins. So Leviticus 23:6, it says, "And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. In the seventh day is a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein." So we see that the seventh day is a Sabbath. So it's the high Sabbath, which is the seventh day. And I've just put a little slide together here, which just details the days of unleavened bread. So the last day of unleavened bread is the first Sabbath after the mandate to form a government runs out. So this is the 21st of Nisan, and that's coming up on Wednesday. So that's unleavened bread. So of course the 15th of Nisan is when Jesus was buried without sin. Then the 16th of Nisan was the Friday, and the 17th of Nisan was the Shabbat, and that's the sheaf of first fruits, which was Resurrection Day on the 17th of Nisan. Then the 18th, 19th, and 20th were normal days, and the 21st of Nisan is the high Sabbath. So that's the 15th of April, Wednesday, the 15th of April. I think I've got that right. Yeah. So unleavened bread, of course, represents being without sin, which is what the church is because of the work that Christ did at the beginning of the feast. So if we think about it, we see that that the Passover was fulfilled in Christ. And of course, when the feast began 14th and he was buried on the 15th of Nisan. But what about the last day of unleavened bread, or the last day of the feast of Passover, which is the 21st of Nisan? That's a high Sabbath. So that's what I'm going into today, which is the crossing over of the Red Sea. So let me just get that back here. So we can see that it tells us the Jews believe that on the 21st of Nisan, that is when they crossed over the Red Sea. Let me just get that up here. So it says here, there we go. So I'll just zoom that in so you can see that. Okay, on Wednesday, the seventh night of Pesach, right? So we're looking at a parallel. The week, the formation of the week, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, is the same as it was on Passover, at the Exodus, and also at the crucifixion week. So this year is parallel with those days. So it says on Wednesday, the seventh night of Pesach, the beginning of the 21st of Nisan, Israel entered the sea, and in the morning they came out and saw what God's exalted hand had done to the Egyptians. So the 21st of Nisan, or the seventh day of unleavened bread, is when they crossed over the Red Sea. Okay, so let's just go here. You can see Nisan 21 is in the Hebrew year 2448 or 1312 BC. 7 days after the exodus from Egypt, the Red Sea miraculously split, and the Jewish people walked through on dry land. The sea then closed back, drowning Pharaoh and his troops. Till today, the final days of Passover are a special holiday commemorating the splitting of the sea. So, of course, when Jesus Christ came and did his work upon the cross and brought us salvation, that was the fulfillment of the the blood on the lintel and the doorposts, and the lamb that was slain, taken into the homes. But the crossing over of the Red Sea, which is the 21st of Nisan, when was that fulfilled? So I'm looking at the 21st of Nisan, and that's the purpose of this this video. That's the next interesting date that I'm looking at, that I wanted to share with you guys. And then just a couple of more writings on this book, which is called the Book of Our Heritage, the Jewish Year and the Days of Significance. They also believe that that Moses was put into the water by his parents on the 21st of Nisan. It says in this book here that that it was on this very day, 81 years before Israel stood on the banks of the Red Sea, so the same day that Moshe was cast into the river as a result of Pharaoh's edict. And that's in the Talmud, it's written that. And that day, when the infant Moses was cast into the river, was the 21st of Nisan. So the same day that Moses was put into the river, they say, is the same day that the Red Sea was split. The ministering angel said, Master of the world, he who is destined to sing the song of the sea on this day, shall he be punished on this day. So that is when Pharaoh was obviously destroyed on the 21st of Nisan, and that's when they crossed over. It goes on to say, on this same date, 1 year before the Exodus, Moses left Midian at God's commandment to take Israel out. For on the 15th of Nisan, God appeared to him from within the bush and urged him for 7 days, the period of Passover, Pesach, to accept this mission. So they believe that Moses was put into the Nile, into the bulrushes on the 21st of Nisan, and that God appeared to Moses over the Passover period, and a year later, that is when the Exodus happened, and they walked to the Red Sea and crossed over 7 days later. So, guys, that is the date that I'm looking at. It also says in this book here, which is the summary of laws for Jewish living, it says, on the 7th day of Pesach, the 21st of Nisan, the Red Sea split and the Israelites crossed to the other side on the dry seabed. The Torah reading for this day describes the splitting of the Red Sea and includes the Song of the Sea, which the Israelites sang when they were saved. So the fulfillment of the crossing over of the Red Sea, when did that ever happen? As far as the typology is concerned, we know that Jesus was the Lamb. Could it be that the crossing over of the Red Sea on the last day of Passover, that is Nisan the 21st, that is on Wednesday, is the type of the rapture of the church? And of course, we shall see very shortly in a couple of days' time. And it also says in this book, the Pentateuch, discourses on the several revelations of Jesus Christ. It's well known and established that when they had passed through the sea, it says on the 21st day of Nisan or Abib, they saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore, for which great act they sang the Lord's song, recorded in the 15th chapter of the Exodus. So the 21st of Nisan is on Wednesday, and I also just wanted to do this one thing quickly. Just give me 2 seconds. Okay, let's go to here. Play from current slide. Okay, going back to the Zechariah 12:10, about this sounds like it is. This sounds like Jerusalem and Israel on lockdown during Passover. So let's just go through this again. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem. So it's Jerusalem in focus here, the spirit of grace and of supplication. And they shall look upon me, or look unto me, whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is bitterness for his firstborn. So that's talking about the death of the firstborn. And then in verse 11 it says, in that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem. Jerusalem specifically, as the mourning of the Hadidrim in the valley of Megiddon. So I'm going to go over that because that's talking about King Josiah, when Josiah was killed by Pharaoh Necho. And verse 12 it says, and the land shall mourn, every family apart. Every family apart. The family of the house of David apart. Why? And their wives apart. So this isn't just talking about the families as far as David and Nathan and Levi and Shimei. This is saying, and their wives apart. This is going down to an actual family level, not just family by name, so Levi and David, but actually the individual families, because their wives are apart. The family of the house of Nathan apart, and their wives apart. The family of the house of Levi apart, and their wives apart. The family of Shimei apart, and their wives apart. All the families that remain. All the families that remain. That's like Psalm 83, where they've taken counsel against thy hidden ones. All the families that remain. Every family apart, and their wives apart. That sounds like lockdown to me. So let's just go to where that is talking about the mourning of Hadidrim in the valley of Megiddon, and that is King Josiah. And in order to understand that, we need to read Chronicles. Let me just go there. 2 Chronicles. Okay, so 2 Chronicles 34 tells you about when Josiah starts to reign. Josiah was the son of Amnon, who was the son of Manasseh. So Josiah had a wicked father and he had a wicked son. He was the last good king in Israel. So of all the kings which were in, of course, the southern kingdom, because the northern kingdom had gone, Josiah was the final and the last good king of Israel. And Jeremiah talks about how there was a great mourning when he was killed by Necho. So if you want to get the background, read 2 Chronicles 34 for when Josiah was 8 years old, and then 18 years later, when he was 20, he would have been 27, then they found a book, and it was the book of the law of God, and they read this thing, and then he brought in all these reforms and took out idolatry. And you can read that in 2 Chronicles chapter 34. And then in 2 Chronicles chapter 35, it talks about Josiah keeping a Passover for the Lord. So I'm just going to go through this chapter because it's quite important, because it gives you a context of when Josiah was killed and what had just happened. And it was a very unique Passover, just like the Passover we are in right now. Okay, so in 2 Chronicles chapter 35, it says, moreover, Josiah kept a Passover unto the Lord in Jerusalem, and they killed the Passover on the 14th day of the month. And he set the priests in their charges and encouraged them to the service of the house of the Lord, and said unto the Levites that taught Israel, which were holy unto the Lord, put the holy ark in the house which Solomon the son of David, king of Israel, did build. It shall not be a burden upon your shoulders. Serve now the Lord your God and his people. So be zealous and be encouraged and be positive about the work of the Lord. And prepare yourselves by the houses of your fathers after your courses, according to the writing of David, king of Israel, and according to the writing of Solomon his son. So David set up the courses of Israel. And stand in the holy place according to the divisions of the families of the fathers of your brethren, the people, and after the division of the families of the Levites. So kill the Passover and sanctify yourselves, and prepare your brethren that they might do according to the word of the Lord by the hand of Moses. And Josiah gave to the people of the flock lambs and kids for all the Passover offerings, and all that were present, the number of 30,000, and 3,000 bullocks. These were of the king's substance. So he implemented this Passover after he had wiped out idolatry, which had been prevalent since the days of Manasseh. And of course, Manasseh ruled for 55 years, and then Amnon ruled for a couple of years. So it goes on to say that this was a very unique Passover because they just wiped out all of the idolatry that was in the land. And they'd found this book, and then he cleansed the temple. And it says in verse 8, and his princes gave willingly unto the people, to the priests and to the Levites, Hilkiah, Zechariah, Jehiel, rulers of the house of God, gave unto the priests for the Passover offerings 2,600 small cattle and 300 oxen. Okay, and then it goes on to tell you that they gave these oxen, and the people were giving because they were so happy that they had this new righteous king Josiah who had done all these wonderful things. And in verse 10 it says, so the service was prepared, and the priests stood in their place, and the Levites in their courses, according to the king's commandment. And they killed the Passover, and the priests sprinkled the blood from their hands, and the Levites flayed them. So they covered the people in the blood. And they removed the burnt offerings that they might give according to the divisions of the families of the people to offer unto the Lord, as it is written in the book of Moses. And so they did with oxen. And they roasted the Passover with fire according to the ordinance. But the other holy offerings sod they in the pots and in cauldrons and in pans. So he's telling you that that they implemented this Passover. And then it says in verse 16, so all the service of the Lord was prepared the same day to keep the Passover, to offer burnt offerings upon the altar. And the children of Israel that were present kept the Passover at that time at the feast of unleavened bread 7 days. And here's where it gets interesting. So verse 18 says, and there was no Passover like that kept in Israel from the days of Samuel the prophet, neither did all the kings of Israel keep such a Passover as Josiah kept, and the priests and the Levites and all Judah and Israel that were present, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Has there ever been a Passover like this one, where the Jews have been locked up in their homes since the days of Moses? Okay, verse 19 says, in the 18th year of the reign of Josiah was this Passover kept, a very important Passover. Now, this is where Josiah gets killed, right at this moment. It says, after all this, when Josiah prepared the temple, Necho, king of Egypt, came up to fight against Carchemish by the Euphrates, and Josiah went against him. But he sent ambassadors against him, saying, what have I to do with thee? So Pharaoh is saying, why are you coming against me, thou king of Judah? I come not against thee this day, but against the house wherewith I have war. But Josiah wouldn't listen, for God commanded me. This is Necho saying that God has commanded Pharaoh Necho, for to bear thee from meddling with God, who is with me, that he destroy thee not. Nevertheless, Josiah would not turn his face from him, but disguised himself that he might fight with him, and hearken not to the words of Necho from the mouth of God, and came to fight in the valley of Megiddo. And the archers shot at King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, have me away, for I am sore wounded. And his servants therefore took him out of that chariot and put him in a second chariot that he had, and they brought him to Jerusalem, and he died, and was buried in one of the sepulchres of his father. And all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. Josiah was the good king. He was the last good king of Israel until, of course, the King of Kings came to Israel. And what happened? He was killed. So Jeremiah lamented for Josiah, and all the singing men and the singing women spake of Josiah in their lamentations to this day, and made them an ordinance in Israel. And behold, they are written in the Lamentations. So we see that when it talks about them being, let me just put this back here, pray from current slide. Just come up. So in that day there shall be a great mourning in Jerusalem, as the mourning of the Hadidrim in the valley of Megiddo. Why? Because a good king had died, and that is why the people are going to mourn, because they're going to realize that it was Jesus Christ who was pierced. They shall look upon me whom they have pierced, not literally, but figuratively. They're going to realize when the rapture of the church happens that no one's going to miss the rapture of the church, and a large portion of Israel, because there's plenty of Jews who are now Christians in Israel, are going to disappear. So they're going to wake up and realize at the rapture of the church. And that seems to describe a lockdown when it occurs. Okay, and then the last one is this one. We know that Kaduri said that there would be a war in heaven on Rosh Hashanah between the side of good and the side of evil. And the only place in the Bible which references a war taking place in heaven historically is in Daniel chapter 10. This is the only one that I can think of where Gabriel comes to Daniel and tells him that the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 1 and 20 days. So if there was a war which took place in heaven at this stage, perhaps that which was done before will be done again, and the war in heaven will last 21 days, which brings us to the 21st of Nisan. So it says here that Michael came to help Gabriel. Lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. So I thought that was quite interesting that Kaduri said that there would be a war in heaven from Rosh Hashanah or the first of Nisan, as far as the Exodus calendar goes, the biblical calendar, and that is the head of the year. So 21 days Gabriel was kept back, and perhaps 21 days that war in heaven, maybe there's a war in heaven going on right now. So let's see how we're doing, guys. Okay, cool. So I hope the signal is still good. I'm waiting, and I'll be watching for Wednesday, which is the 21st of Nisan, and that is the crossing over day. So I love you guys, and if not, then I've got a couple of other dates in mind, but let's wait until then, and I will see you in the sky.